Hey everyone, so I just watched the most recent trailer for Andor Season 2, and it looks really good, doesn't it? Like they've picked up right where they left off at the end of Season 1. You know, galactic bureaucracy, brilliant character work, dialogue that sounds like it was actually written by adults, deliberate framing, spaces that actually look lived in, and that same simmering tension running underneath everything, kind of cold in an oddly compelling way. And then, out of nowhere, the thought hit me. Was Andor Season 1 really that good? I mean, considering the context, considering how thoroughly Disney Star Wars has worn most of us down over the past decade, how that galaxy far, far away has for a long time now felt more like a content factory farm than a mythos, how even mentioning Star Wars in any capacity nowadays is greeted with an ocean of eye rolls, it's a fair question. Fans of this once beloved space opera have been burnt. A lot. By an uncoordinated, soul-sucking trilogy which defecated on everything that came before while offering nothing new to the table, by mediocre spin-offs and empty nostalgia, by a creative leadership that often seems to actively resent the people who still care. So the idea that the Cassian Andor show, of all things, might have been a masterpiece, that almost just sounds like wishful thinking, right? So, I thought about it, I really sat with the question. For about 5 seconds, before I thought, no, yeah, Andor Season 1 really was that good. Like a lot of people, I didn't immediately watch Andor Season 1 when it first dropped on Disney Plus back in, September of 2022? At that point, I hadn't even bothered to watch the Book of Boba Fett or the Obi-Wan Kenobi series due to bad reviews, and full disclosure, I still haven't seen either of those shows and probably never will. By then, the whole Disney Plus machine had started to feel kind of putrid. Each new series felt less like a creative endeavour and more like an obligation. One more checkbox in the franchise spreadsheet, one more slice of content on the endless conveyor belt of mediocrity. So when Andor was announced, a prequel to a prequel about the secondary protagonist from Rogue One, a film which for sure I liked but which isn't exactly known for its three-dimensional characters, let's just say I thought that it would probably be another skip for me. I just continue to watch the original trilogy over and over again and kind of ignore everything else. However, it wasn't long before I began to feel a disturbance in the Force. Whispers from the stratosphere that new Cassian Andor show was really, really good. Not just better than expected good, not just solid for Disney Plus good. No, people were talking about it with actual reverence, calling it intelligent, grounded, adult. And mind you, this wasn't just Star Wars fanatics saying this stuff. No, this was coming from people who were just as jaded by the franchise as me. I even heard a few go as far as to call it Star Wars' answer to The Wire. So, at last, one day, I decided to throw Andor on. Now, I have to say, from what everyone else was saying online, my expectations were pretty high. But there was also that voice in my head saying, come on man, this is Disney Star Wars we're talking about, okay? Just be careful. So, what did I think about Andor? Well, the beginning of Andor is quiet, restrained. It opens not with an explosion or a space battle, but with a mistake. A moment of violence in the rain, not framed as cool or heroic, but awkward, tense, messy. It's a scene that sets the tone for everything that follows, letting the viewer know that this is not a story about destiny, but desperation. I really appreciate how these opening episodes take their time. The plot moves with real patience, but there's a purpose to it. We're not being rushed through exposition or bombarded with lore, we're being let in, slowly, to a world that feels like it existed long before we ever got there. Ferrix, especially, is a triumph of world building. The labor, the hierarchy, the interpersonal dynamics, it all feels really lived in and natural in a way Star Wars hasn't since the original trilogy. To put it simply, Andor just felt different. Right away. I feel like most Star Wars media tries to be good Star Wars media, which is obviously fair enough, but Andor felt like a brilliant show that just happened to be set in the Star Wars universe. The iconography is there, for sure, the planets, the uniforms, the familiar hum of a speeder, but it's never the point, if that makes sense. The show isn't trading in nostalgia, it's genuinely and sincerely trying to tell a story about power and control and rebellion, and this makes for some really interesting results. For example, this is the most threatening and real the Empire has ever felt. Sure, in the original trilogy, we obviously have brilliant villains like Darth Vader and the Emperor, but due to the camp, pulpy nature of those films, the everyday machinery of the Empire, you know, the stormtroopers, the Imperial officers, are presented as clumsy, disposable, even a little cartoonish. They miss their shots, they bump their heads, and overall they exist more as obstacles than as representations of actual systemic power. In fact, you don't even really understand what's so bad with the Empire in those movies, you're just sort of told that they're evil. But watching Andor, the Empire are genuinely terrifying. Like, you hate the Empire in this show, and fully understand why a rebellion needed to happen. Not because the Empire is some cartoonish embodiment of evil, but because it's a cold, bureaucratic machine. There are no moustache-twirling villains here, no grand operatic speeches about galactic domination. Just boardrooms, and reports, and career ambitions, and petty rivalries. Characters like Dedra Meero aren't evil in the space wizard sense, they're terrifying because they're competent. It's that classic banality of evil, playing out in real time. The kind of oppression that doesn't feel theatrical, but procedural, systemic. And weirdly, that makes it scarier. This attention to detail extends to the rest of the cast too. Everyone in Andor feels real. Not just in the way they talk, but in the way they move, react, second guess, compromise. From Luthen to Andor to Mon Mothma to Ben Shapiro, everyone feels like a fully formed person. They have lives outside the frame, histories that weigh on them. And all of that contributes to this sense that Andor isn't just interested in telling a story, it's interested in building a world you can actually believe in. And all of that, the grounded characters, the believable politics, the quiet menace, is reinforced by just how real the show looks. Gone are the blurry green screen backdrops that pervade so much of modern blockbuster storytelling. The volume's been switched off. We're back on location, or at least it feels that way. You know, concrete, metal, dirt, shadows that fall in the right direction, spaces that echo when people walk through them. It's textured, tangible, and it gives the show a kind of visual integrity that's been missing from Star Wars for a really long time. And all of this serves to make the stakes feel real, grounding the plot and giving weight to all the ambitious stuff the show will do in its second and third acts, which brings us to the entire Aldhani heist arc was when it really hit me just how good Andor was. This is where all that slow burn setup begins to lock into place. Characters start to converge, motivations sharpen, and the broader themes of rebellion, sacrifice, and disillusionment starts bubbling to the surface. Cassian joins a ragtag group of rebels posing as Imperial soldiers, infiltrating a garrison on Aldhani to steal an entire quarter's payroll. And it's really tense. Probably because of how grounded it feels. Like, there's this one moment where a TIE fighter flies overhead our characters, and man, the difference in size is staggering. It's just so cool to see such an iconic vehicle have perhaps its most powerful moment 45 years after it was first created for the big screen. And speaking of the characters, they're so great because, well, they're not action heroes. They're scared, distrustful, barely holding it together. Andor shines here because it takes the time to show us why each person is doing this. Their rebellion is messy and personal, built not on some grand prophecy but loss and disillusionment. This is also where we really begin to see what the show is doing with the character of Cassian Andor himself. Because he's not in it for the cause, not yet. He's only there to get his bag, a mercenary embedded with true believers. And that tension, ideological as much tactical, simmers under every scene. Cassian is not ready to believe in the cause, but he's watching others die for it, and at the end of the heist when Richie from the Bear reveals his true intentions, offering to split the money and run, Cassian is forced into a decision. Not ideological, but moral. Spoilers for the show, but he ends up shooting the guy, not to protect the rebellion, but to draw a line for himself. A line between self-interest and something else. Perhaps something approaching principle? If the Ferrix arc is about systems grinding down on everyday life, then the Aldhani arc is about how ideology fractures under pressure. It's Andor's Empire Strikes Back, if you will. The bleak middle chapter where everyone loses something and no one leaves clean. The actual heist sequence is brilliantly executed. Not flashy, but tight, suspenseful, filled with dread. The setting, with its sacred pilgrimage and imperial desecration, adds a symbolic layer that gives the action weight. This isn't just about stealing money. It's about reclaiming something. And even in success, it's devastating. Most of the characters die. There's no cheer, no victory lap, just trauma. But also perhaps something which, if you squint, kind of looks like the beginnings of redemption. While watching the Aldhani heist, I was pretty floored. I couldn't believe I was actually enjoying new Star Wars media this much. It was such a breath of fresh air, and I didn't really think the show could get any better. And then... I love the irony of Andor pulling off this insanely illegal heist, completely getting away with it, before being arrested while holidaying in Space Florida for literally no reason. Again, it's just such bold writing for a Star Wars show. Anyway, the actual Narkina 5 arc is... I'm not even joking here, some of the best television I've ever seen. This prison which Cassian Andor is sent to literally lives in my head rent-free. I have nightmares about this place. It's so well designed to make you just hate the Empire, with its blinding white walls, endless identical hallways, humiliating routines, flavorless food, forced productivity quotas, oh, and the electric floors which will literally kill you if you disobey. I imagine most of Disney Plus's TV shows are cranked out in a place like this. Oh man, I'm keeping that in. For me, the heart of this prison arc is the character of Kino Loy. Now, first of all, man, it can be easy to forget how good of an actor Andy Serkis is, considering he's usually playing a chimpanzee or Gollum. But he is honestly so riveting here. His entire arc, from a man fully entrenched in the system, clinging to the rules and deadlines as a kind of survival mechanism, to someone whose faith is slowly eroded by the realization that the system he's enforcing is a lie, to that extraordinary moment where he finds the courage to lead a rebellion he never asked for, deliver a speech he never wanted to give, and ultimately make a sacrifice he knows he can't survive. It's one of the most affecting and quietly tragic things this franchise has ever pulled off. I'm not even joking here, during that 10th episode of the show, I literally was so invested in the prison break that I got up off my sofa, dragged a chair right in front of my TV screen, and just sat there in complete awe. I simply could not believe what I was watching. I could not grasp how a spin-off show about Cassian Andor was this good. And then, if you can remember, just to top this all off, the episode finishes with that monologue from Luthen. You know, the "I burn my life to make a sunrise I know I'll never see" speech. Which, again... I was just watching it with my jaw on the floor. It's like something you'd hear in a Shakespeare play. And again, all of this works, not just because it's amazingly written, but because the world feels so real and lived in. That's what grounds all of this stuff. That's what gives it weight. Andor isn't just telling a story, it's constructing an entire political and social ecosystem within a world that was originally built for pulp adventure and mythic simplicity. It's taking this space opera backdrop with its blasters and bounty hunters and space wizards, and applying a level of systemic, grounded storytelling that makes it feel newly relevant. Characters have jobs, routines, constraints. They have secrets they have to keep and choices they can't take back. You see it so clearly in the Mon Mothma storyline. She's not out there giving rousing speeches or leading armies. She's sitting in dimly lit Coruscant lounges trying to move money without getting caught. She's trying to fight fascism through bureaucracy, while being slowly suffocated by her own life of wealth and appearance. And it's brilliant. You can feel her losing ground, socially, politically, emotionally. Inch by inch, her rebellion is quieter, but just as risky, and just as heartbreaking. Honestly, there's just a confidence to this show which, to this day, kind of blows my mind whenever I think about it. Just the sheer audacity to try something like this, to make what is essentially an HBO-style political thriller inside the Star Wars universe. To strip away the lightsabers and the destiny and the chosen ones, and ask instead, what does oppression look like? What does rebellion cost? Why should we care? Who are the people who make these big galaxy-shifting events actually happen? And yes, of course, it's doing something completely different, but never in a way that disrespects what came before. It's not cynical, it's not revisionist, it's just serious. Thoughtful. And a lot of that has to come down to Tony Gilroy. The guy didn't just write a good Star Wars show, he built something that feels like it's actively resisting the creative decay happening all around it. I mean, when you stack Andor next to the rest of the Disney Plus catalogue, not just Star Wars but Marvel as well, it becomes even more impressive. In fact, I genuinely think it might take some time for us to realise just how important Andor truly is. Because the further we get from it, the more the conveyor belt of mediocre mediocre, risk-averse franchise content keeps churning, the more Andor is going to stand out. Not just as a high point, but as a kind of quiet miracle. A reminder that you can take these fantasy worlds seriously, that you can experiment with tones and try out new stuff, that you can still tell stories here that are smart, grounded, emotionally complex, and that doing so doesn't diminish the magic of Star Wars, it deepens it. Andor is, in my opinion, the best on-screen Star Wars we've had since The Empire Strikes Back. It brings me great sadness that Tony Gilroy is not just in charge of the entire franchise, because he seems to be the only guy to understand what that galaxy far, far away actually needs right now. But hey, we get Season 2 at least. It looks brilliant, and I cannot wait to watch and review it here on this channel. But until then, I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.